had one chapter on feminism. And these women who I interviewed were amazing. They'd mostly come out of the Vietnam anti-war movement, and they were radicals, and they were frustrated by how the men in the movement had been treating them, and they wanted more leadership. And so they started the beginnings of the women's liberation movement. And after I finished that chapter, I realized this has to be my next book, because
the movement, and I interviewed about 120 women, mostly women, some men as well, and was happy to get to them. Their ages ranged from about 75 to 95. So that alone, getting to everyone, was really around the fact that this was not a niche movement that was just run by lesbians who hated men, you know, that this was real. And so I quote throughout the book different moments where, you know, columnists and commentators just trash this movement, and it really struck me. I got married in the blue suit that I had bought to go to Mills College, but of course I couldn't go. I got pregnant right out of high school. This was 1960 in Aberdeen, South Dakota. There was no birth control event. So I look back at these heroes of the second wave and look for sort of jewels of wisdom from them. One of them is Pauli Murray, who was I consider the legal architect of the second wave, wrote a brilliant brief that was published in GW Law Journal in 1965, right after the Civil Rights Act was passed, called Jane Crow and the Law. And that is what we're living through now. What she did in that legal journal was describe all the different laws in America that were very different for women than men, and they were the kind of things that eventually Ruth Bader Ginsburg would tackle in the Supreme Court. But we now have women in banned states who are living under Jane Crow. And understanding, I also feel that it's so important now for people to know what it was like then. And it's too easy for women who don't live in banned states to kind of shrug it off, you know, and think, oh, it's not my problem, or they can always travel. And just to remember that in 1973, when Roe was passed, 1 million women a year were getting illegal abortions. Between 1,000 and 5,000 women were dying because of this. And we're going back to Jane Crow, and we're going back to our humanity not being respected. We are no longer first-class citizens in banned states.
It starts with Mother's Day, 2010, when my mother told me that she had had an abortion. I think Mother's Day is a perfectly good day to do that. We were having lunch with my 3 very young children who were ages 9, 13, and 14. And for some reason, I chose this mother's lunch to explain abortion to them. Not really sure why. So I was explaining this is a very important thing for women, for their freedom, for their humanity. And then all of a sudden, Jonesy, which is what I call my mother in public at least, piped up and said, I had an abortion. And we were all a little stunned. It was kind of a TMI moment. And I said, well, when? So I printed out the PDF and started reading the names. They were alphabetical. First name, Eve Auchincloss, Sunny Aurelio, Lorraine Beebe, and then Joan Bingham. My mother was on this list. I was just so amazed that she had done this. And it was as if she'd crawled out of her grave with her hand and shook me by the collar and said, you know what? You have been selling me short, kid. And I actually am a feminist too, but we come in all sizes and shapes. And I realized that I had not seen her really fully for who she really was as the class. And I had interviewed 120 women, asked them all about their abortions, but hadn't even asked my mother. So I thought the only way to honor her would be to dedicate the book to her. So I did.